When we seek to assess our environment, we are often in a situation of uncertainty. This is true for many things around us, and it is also the case in negotiations. How can we tell whether something we want to buy is expensive, for example, or cheap? How do we know that a price of $80,000 for a house is a price that corresponds to the actual value of that house? What does $80,000 mean anyway? $80,000 for a house in some places may be acceptable, but $80,000 in other parts of the world may seem excessive or, on the contrary, unexpectedly low. All this leads me to say that a price means nothing if we don't consider it in relation to a specific context. Faced with these uncertainties, in order to interpret what is happening to us and to be able to make decisions and behave appropriately, we need what we call a frame of reference, a context for comparison. The frame of reference is what gives meaning. It is what allows us to make decisions. In negotiations, the proposals that are put on the table are compared to reference points. The reference points therefore constitute frames of reference for a negotiation. A reference point is a point against which an element, an offer made to us for example, is compared in order to be evaluated. In negotiations, we have several possible reference points. We have already discussed several of them in the previous section. A proposition, for example, can be compared with our aspiration point, or reservation point, but also with the first offers that were made, and with the various alternatives, or with our BATNA. All of these points are internal to the current negotiations. But other elements can also be taken as reference points. These points are said to be external because they are independent of the current negotiation. The market value of the property, for example, or even the price our neighbor paid for a similar good, are examples of external reference point. It is difficult to predict which reference point a particular negotiator will use in the negotiation. One of the only studies I know that thought to answer this question compared the use of the reservation point with the use of market value as reference points. The result of this study indicates that when negotiators are faced with goods that vary greatly in price, as in the case of a painting, for example, they prefer to use their own reservation point as a reference point. Conversely, if negotiators are discussing the price of a good that is relatively stable, as the purchase of a car, for example, they prefer to use reference point like the market value of the good. The reference points that we use radically influence the outcome of negotiations. Indeed, depending on the reference point we use, the interpretation we make of our counterpart's offer vary drastically and can lead us in one case to the acceptance and in the other case to the rejection of these offers.